welcome everybody. I think that we are sitting at a comfortable number where it looks like everybody has entered. I am Victoria Lopez-Herrera, and I'm currently at the University of Texas at San Antonio. And my co-facilitator today, I'll let her introduce herself.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Nicole LaRocque, Associate Director of Programs with the University of Colorado Boulder.
So, you know, I wanted to bring Nicole in so we could get some more dialogue in on these roundtables, and so that, you know, we can continue to kind of bounce off of each other ideas, because I feel like that's been one of the great themes with all of these roundtables, of us being able to ask questions and dialogue and share. So a few little housekeeping reminders. Please use the chat. Use the chat box, and whenever you do enter your information with your comment or anything like that, that you put your institution on there. That way, just in case you share resources or you have an idea that someone wants to follow up with, they know how to kind of hunt you down and be able to locate you that way. And again, if you want to contribute verbally, that you also just remind everybody of where you're at. So I did send out a survey and got some great feedback about some of the topics and how we wanted to spend our time today. We are going to be focusing on those reopening plans and thinking about best practices and those types of things. And so, but before we head into that, you know, I want to just take some time to remember about what's happening, right? And what are we doing? And Nicole and I have a relationship, and we've, you know, talked previously, you know, about just what's happening in life, in our own lives. And you know, she mentioned about the fact that we're not just working from home, we're doing pandemic work at home. And that's just, it's different. It's not necessarily like we're just like, oh, let's go home and do it from home. Nicole, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And I'm posting a resource right now. And I'd like to say that I created this thought, but I didn't. It came in one of the university bulletins that I actually read most of the time. And it was an article from LinkedIn, and it's just a real simple read. And it came, I think, maybe a week or two into us all working remotely, but you know, Victoria had brought it up, and it's a dialogue I continue to have because it really, really resonates. And, you know, there's this idea that all of us in Campus Rec, oh, you have the summer off, right? God, I wish. But we all know we spend the 3 months of summer doing 9 months of work that we didn't get to do because we were putting out fires all school year long and moving at a rapid pace, right? So kind of this idea of, oh, how nice, you're working from home. Well, I would say it wasn't until last week, maybe the week before, that I started doing something that resembled my real job or my typical job. And it's varied. So it's really not about your programming or your facilities. Granted, your leadership is a really, really strong piece of this. But as I was talking to Aaron and Victoria this morning, we're also all over the spectrum right now, right? I'm getting ready to dive into deeper conversations about furloughs and layoffs at our institution, while other institutions are opening and looking at their checklists, and that I know is a strong part of what folks want to talk about today. So it's really navigating that pandemic while navigating your new leadership styles and working remotely. So I encourage you to check out the article that I just posted.
So, you know, you talked about, you know, being in different places with all of this stuff, and I'm curious, you know, in Texas, starting today, we'll start to be able to open up some entities, but it's more like a small percentage of people that can enter restaurants. Nothing yet as far as gyms or hair salons or, you know, those kinds of things. That's what's happening here. What's happening in Colorado?
Well, I'm getting my hair done this afternoon. So that's COVID gray is run its course. And I'm going to hop in and do that because who knows if we're going to be closed 2 weeks from now, right? But we have moved to a SAFER in place. So as opposed to shelter in place, today we began with SAFER in place. So some key areas are opening, not gyms, that's not there yet. And then just focusing on the SAFER practices. I don't believe restaurants are open yet, but I think some retail places are opening. And then of course our institution at least operates differently. It's not necessarily right. Our institutions are common their own community within a bigger community with their own set of rules, which is still a hard shelter in place with our institution.
So Haley was saying from Wyoming that they're reopening gyms, salons, daycares. Virginia's saying that in Jersey, they're opening county and state parks and golf courses this weekend. So I'd love to hear from more people about kind of where you are as far as this opening with regard to the community and what's happening. I also want to go ahead and share so we can start to transition to, more of that opening conversation. There is, if you are not subscribed to the NIRSA Connect, there is another Google document that's being created and shared out there that people can, I'm going to put it in the chat box, there we go, where people are adding and actively sharing their thoughts and ideas and plans around that. So it looks like North Carolina still is a shelter in place. Arkansas, gyms are opening on Monday. Wow. Was that Becky? Becky, I'd love to hear from you if you're thinking about if you are going to open, you might be probably in that the early phase of people actually opening. And I would love to hear from you about your experience thus far in planning this reopening.
Well, gyms in the state are allowed to reopen on Monday with very heavy restrictions in place. We are not planning to reopen, first and foremost, because our campus is still closed in a work from home scenario. So we're really relying on that to keep us closed. Second, because it will be nearly impossible for us to get the PPE required in order to meet the guidelines that the state has put forth. And third, like I said, there's a lot of restrictions on it. First, the biggest one is that every person exercising has to have a 12-foot radius around them, clear of other people. Our facility is not really set up great for that, so it will take quite a bit of time for us to kind of adjust and relocate. And we're very concerned about being able to staff because we're on a hiring freeze and we don't have very many people around. So we're kind of crossing our fingers. And the other thing at the press conference when they announced this, they had someone who runs a gym, like a big fancy gym in the Little Rock area, who was speaking about what they're doing, and they're hiring all these extra people to kind of monitor. But in the midst of this, like so many, we got news of what our budget cut for next year is going to be. So we don't have the resources to put all of these extra people on the floor to watch while our numbers are going to be heavily restricted because of the new guidelines.
So right, like how do you pay for these people when you need additional to be able to do it, right? So yes, I think on some other things and other ways that 12-foot rule, Nicole, right? Like I think you had questioned about that too, right?
Yeah, we were talking about that before, so it was interesting to hear you say that, Becky, because as we open, of course, research, right? We'll know 5 years from now what all the best practices should have been for now. But I was reading all the, we have our 6 foot where Christopher and I are obviously 6 feet apart right now, but that does not apply to heavy respiration. So I saw some research because I'm a runner. So I was thinking about that. Like when I passed somebody on the trail, 13 feet was the last, I think it was a study from Norway, and I've seen the gamut since then. So that's one question that I was wondering, if we're thinking every other piece of cardio equipment, cutting our function in half, is that really best practices now? 6 feet in the classroom is very different than 6 feet breathing heavily on the treadmill. Are we now every third piece of equipment or fourth piece of equipment reducing our function by 2/3 as opposed to 50%?
In the chat box, it was Lewis from, Joe was asking from California, is anyone planning to open outdoor spaces only while leaving indoor spaces closed? I think in that same vein, Nicole, the same thought. Anybody else out there thinking about that?
Joe, this is Vicki, Nebraska, and it's interesting, the conversations that we're having is they're more concerned about our outdoor spaces than our indoor spaces. And and I think a lot of that is because, we have, soccer teams that come on the field and things like that. And our concern is kind of back where we were talking earlier. I think, Becky, you were saying, is that we have a hiring freeze and, we're talking about budget cuts and all of that kind of stuff. And so if it's on our facilities or in our facilities, how do we monitor whether or not they follow the guidelines? Because I would say technically we're responsible or liable if something were to happen and we weren't there monitoring the fact that they need to be 6 feet or 10 feet or whatever the latest is, and somebody does get sick or and then they've got all these people around, and so how do we do that given the fact that we're talking budget cuts, and we're talking about how that affects our self-generated, because a good chunk of our budget is also self-generated. So in a time where we literally have suspended student fees, which is a good chunk of our personnel, and now you're talking about how we can't self-generate. We're talking some pretty serious budget issues, and one of the things we've been talking about is, well, how can we open up, for example, our outdoor equipment rental, monitoring that. We have monitor on that in terms of people renting things. And so that we could at least try in some fashion, once we go back to level 3, try in some fashion to continue to generate something to help, because we know there are going to be budget cuts.
Vicki, I think that brought up something interesting. Chris from West Virginia here. We've kind of tried to figure out how that would apply indoors. So we actually thought about the potential of taking fitness equipment and spreading out all over our 7 courts to eliminate the usage of the courts in one instance, while also trying to accommodate. But West Virginia is in a phase as well. We're starting phase 2 next week. If that goes well, phase 3 would start the week after, which does include gyms. But like a lot of you all, we're not there yet on our campus, but surrounding gyms will be there. And so we're kind of looking to see what those guidelines would look like. But we do have potentially the ability to at least spread out the equipment over the course of a larger portion of our facility and just take the basketball courts offline. Or honestly, the basketball courts might wind up being storage for some of the equipment we have to take off of the floors as well. So just looking at different ways that we can do that, knowing that theoretically this is probably going to last through the fall. And so moving equipment for 4 months is going to be worth it maybe in the long run.
I know in a lot of the other roundtables, and specific to some of the areas, there is conversation around, like, how are we going to clean? How would we space? Where would we put things? And I know that's important, but I do want to go back to Vicki, something you're talking about, which, I think Nicole has touched on it, and I know that I'm feeling it too, is how are people feeling and thinking about the budget implications and us being able to actually then still reopen, right? I'm curious about what strategies people are thinking about, or maybe what hurdles and struggles are people facing that maybe others might then hear, like, oh, we're going to be in that same space, or we are in that same space. So that maybe this brain trust here could help with people navigating that piece too. You muted yourself.
I don't know if we're unusual, but our chancellor and president have made sure that throughout our spring that our students are still being taken care of in terms of their employment. And I don't know if that's the norm or not, but our students have been being paid. And whether they, it's what's called an admin pay, they got so many hours based on their percentage of work. And so that cut into a chunk of, our finances, because whether they were working or not, if they had an average number of hours they worked a week, then we compensated them for that. And then they could also work above and beyond, whether that be, working on updating manuals or doing the development stuff or things like that. So we've been paying out a chunk of money this spring just to get through the spring to keep our students kind of whole, in this situation, because they're getting cut short on so many things. And so going forward, though, they've also been really good about saying, they're protecting staff. I don't know that they can continue to do that if we are not back online, no pun intended, for fall, because I think we're going to risk risk positions. But they've asked us to come up with, let's say, what would it look like if we have to cut 5%? What would it look like if we have to cut 10%? What would it look like if we had to cut 15%? So we've been going through all those scenarios to see, and some of that is in hours that the building can be open. Some of that could be in actually cutting back on programmatic things, hopefully not for the long haul, but at least during this time. So we may lose some program pieces to that. And so we're really just looking at every possible scenario and trying to protect what we have, but at the same time be realistic about, we may have to shut down our pool. We may have to shut down, whatever that is, in order to get through this. And so what does that look like? Because again, when you're talking about programs that, yes, they are supported by student fees, but yes, they also can only survive if they have the self-generated. How do you decide if you cut a program that's self-generating money, or is it enough to be able to say, no, we got to keep these over here because they're our core? And so things like our massage therapy program, that maybe isn't true to our core, our Husker camps, our kids camps, those things, we really have to take really strong look at that, at least for the next year or so, to see if those things just have to go until we can get this figured out.
I'm seeing a lot of folks chiming in on pools, and looking at the information that y'all submitted to NIRSA on this feedback today. It seems like, there was a strong desire and conversation regarding reopening. Again, as Vicki points out, it's all over the gamut. But when Victoria, Aaron, and I were speaking, we were talking about some of the pool stuff. So I'd love it if somebody could kind of chime in and speak to the pools and the lifeguards and your thoughts around there, since I'm seeing a lot of feed on that.
Well, I'm going to chime in if nobody else is, because the lifeguard thing is a really, really big issue for us. I mean, we have somebody who runs our aquatics program that is high risk management aware, and our pool is actually certified as, I don't know if they're the same all over because I don't deal in that area, but it's considered an F pool where we don't technically need lifeguards. And so sometimes the conversation is around, well, technically we don't need them, so that's an area we could cut. And on the other side of that coin is, oh my gosh, it's the highest risk area that we have. Why would we do that? Well, maybe we could cut back to one. Well, there's nothing that they get trained on that includes one person. It all includes, 2 people to get somebody out of the pool or whatever that is. And so, some of the discussion is, maybe we just cut pool hours and we keep our 2 lifeguards on, or, those kinds of things. But that's going to be, as I said to someone who gets to make the decisions, is, it's going to be a really contentious conversation, because, how much are we willing to risk in liability to do some of those kinds of things? And I'm concerned about that.
Hello, this is Steve Herishen from NYU. So we're probably a little ways out before we were reopening, but we're in a very beginning stages of planning. I sat on a aquatics meeting yesterday regarding a lot of this stuff on how this is going to affect everyone. As far as our staffing, we're already looking at that we are probably not returning with student staffing anytime soon. So it's reallocating full-time staff. Some people that have backgrounds, some people that don't, see if they can get qualified. But the other problem is the whole physical distancing, how that's going to look, how many people you're going to allow into the pool. Are you going to have reservation spots per day? So we're all trying to figure out what's the best model to go by, how that all going to work. Is it going to be worth opening? We're also, the summers are big maintenance periods of shutting down a lot of our facilities doing that work. So we're also trying to get that reopened. But as of now, the governor has everything closed. So we might be behind on that as well. So anybody else's thoughts on procedures, wise on trying to reopen, and what that's looking as far as just logistics of trying to be safe and all that. A lot of the talk yesterday was about more lifeguard, proper protocols and that, but didn't really get into like how it's going to look in the pool.
It also looks like a lot of people are going to be cutting their staff, you know, or are supporting student staff until the end of the spring semester. And then I think what's already risen up here is that then come summer, you don't have staffing. And if you do open after that, there is that ramp up piece that would need to occur. So I think there's probably some more logistical thoughts around that. I don't know if anybody might have insight as you start to plan or brainstorm and think about that piece. But also, I know, so some of us are fee-based and some of us heavily depend on outside memberships as well. And so would love to hear, you know, from others about, you know, anything along those lines. How do you think that you might be able to approach communicating to students or other non-affiliated people to ramp up membership sales again, to ramp up communication for like what all of this means and looks like whenever they step back into your center?
You know, Victoria, one of the things I thought, because we are 90% student fee funded, so that tells you very clearly how dire it can be for us in just supporting our staff. So how do you get creative? We are not open to the greater community. We cannot be, but we have an ice rink that we might take down for cost savings for the rest of the year, still to be determined. But the conversation was, do we ramp up and do some, allow community into the building, allow community into the ice rink, because it's unusual circumstances. But then your catch-22 there is now you're bringing community members in, increasing the risk in, are we there to serve our students first? Damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Definitely between a rock and a hard place. And I see Tiffany nodding on that. Maybe there's some thoughts around that to complement what Victoria was bringing up.
Hi, this is Michelle Mirpuri from Tulane University, and I'll kind of chime in there because we are open to community members, our facility, and in our reopening plan, at least for the initial phase, we're trying to figure out how we can only allow Tulane students, faculty, and staff into our facility because of the capacity, the reduction in capacity and the need to space people out a little bit more. So we're actually trying to think on the opposite side of that so that we can serve our Tulane community first.
It's Steve from NYU again. We're on the same thought process of eliminating any guest passes. We don't really have a large outside community involvement. It's basically alumni, but it's a small group. So ours is more about eliminating that. And then the talk is we have multiple buildings, multifunctional, but possibly the cuts is more about limiting times or basically trying to figure out cleaning as well. So maybe staggering building times. So out of the 2 or 3 buildings that we have, that maybe the morning for one building, the afternoon for the other. That way we can get a full cleaning in as well. So there is some of the concerns and thoughts we've had so far.
So Steve, are you all looking at trying to, instead of maybe individual upkeep of equipment and space, you're looking to hopefully just do a full clean of your space and turn it over every day?
Both. Everything's on the table right now, so we're just trying to figure out what would be the best way to do that. I mean, typically we're cleaning every few hours, but now it's, are you going to be setting up a dumbbell area where when the person's done, they put them somewhere and then a person cleans them before they re-rack them? We're not sure how crazy we would get or what we need to do to be, safe. So that's what we're trying to figure out. What are other people thinking? What is the best practices on this? What are we going to be asking or we're being told what people are going to need to wear within the facility. So all those questions, that's what we're kind of waiting on, but we're trying to get ahead of it and kind of have a lot of the things thought out, or at least have our questions when they come to us.
Victoria, can I ask a question of the group? I mentioned that they're worried about our outdoor facilities as much or more so than sometimes they are our indoor. We have, quite a few acres of outdoor facilities. And one of the things we did early when told we had to not encourage people to come on campus is because we do have community who come on when we're not around, and use our facilities on campus. We pulled down tennis nets, and we took down basketball hoops, and we took down, volleyball nets in the sand pits and things like that. And we took down everything we could to discourage them from being on campus. Has anybody else had issues with that?
Hi, Vicki. I'm at Michigan State. Good to see you. So we did cover up all of our outdoor basketball hoops. We had them all over. Our department didn't necessarily oversee the ones on our residence hall basketball courts, but our IPF, our facilities people, went through and they were going to take down the rims, or they were going to put plywood over them if they couldn't get the rims down. So yeah, trying to discourage people from being out, just gathering in groups and playing, because so many students aren't. I guess this is my other question too, is how many of us are working on communication plans, because we're looking at fewer resources. And if you have a large facility, you're not going to have the staffing to go around and observe what's happening in every single space in your facility. So how can we put the onus on students too and say, hey, we are interested in the health and wellness of everyone. Welcome to our facility. Clean your hands and make sure that you're wearing a mask. I'm really curious to know if anyone feels confident, and I don't know that anyone does, about here are the steps that we're taking. Wear a mask, wash your hands. We have wipes in our fitness centers. Wipe down equipment before you use it and after you use it, because it's just not, how much do we take on and how much is unrealistic, and we're just not going to have the resources to do. And my other concern is, are we going to have access to all of the cleaning things that will kill the virus, right? So it sounds great that, yeah, I don't know. I have so many questions and so few answers.
Well, and a big question was, if we require people to have masks of some kind, do we provide them? Do they provide them? Do we provide for our staff? And people if they don't come in with a mask, they can't be accepted. I mean, I'm with you. There's just a lot of, because that's another part of the expense piece that we have to be so cautious of, with the fact that we're probably all going to be in some kind of a budget, undesirable place.
Vicki, this is Christy Caldwell at Texas State. I wanted to go back to your outdoor space, because I think we are similar to some campuses. We have a river that runs through campus and a park that we supervise that is also supervised by the police department. While the county and the city have closed all of their river access parks, we have as well. The number of people that flocked to the park is surprising, but not surprising. So the police had to actually talk to us about staffing the park. So this is our only student employee group that we are employing at this time, is 2 staff from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. that walk the park and ensure nobody is in the park. We have to kick people out of the park, even with the signage that is up. So our outdoor spaces are a big concern. That's our main focus. Our other spaces we've put less attention to because our greatest numbers go to that space. To the point about staff and what we would do, we've been modeling, like many people. Staff, we view the masks and gloves as part of our student employee or full-time employee, because in our situation, we are probably not going to be bringing back as many students, because we are going to be having our full-time staff working the front lines. We're going to prioritize full-time staff, and most likely eliminate a lot of student positions to keep our as many full-time staff employed as we can. But PPE is what we believe we need to provide employees. And so face coverings, we've talked about what level that is, but face coverings and gloves will probably be standard that we provide, but we don't believe that unless the state dictates that it's mandatory, that we can require it of patrons coming in.
Hi, this is Tiffany McChesney. I'm from Nova Southeastern University down in South Florida. And PPE is the big thing that my colleagues and I have been discussing. So along with Christy's point, of course, we're going to provide it for our employees, but that does end up being a pretty extreme cost, because I know there's debate on whether or not you should reuse masks and stuff, but we're generally under the impression that we should not reuse masks. And so if we have 35 employees every single day with new masks every single day, you know, that's going to be pretty costly, and that's in addition to gloves. And then last but certainly not least is cleaning supplies. And so all of this is majorly concerning when it comes to everything being backlogged. And so not sure, one of the things that probably prohibits us from opening anytime soon is that we don't even have access to some of these things. So I'm not sure how some of you have dealt with being backlogged on items that you need for your employee safety, and how you're maybe managing costs associated.
You know, I think that's it's related. I want to ask Walter and to speak about what he put in here, because I feel like it's related, right? So it's now we want you. There's a push, like, you know, let's reopen. And is it okay that we take our time, right? Like, is anybody asking, are we going to be able to sustain this? And Marc, you also had an excellent point as well. I'm wondering if the two of you might be able to chime in and share a little bit more. Walter, are you able to?
Hey y'all, sorry, I'm carrying a kid around, so no video, but
it's okay.
Yeah,
You're always welcome.
They're here. So I think what I was kind of alluding to really is that, you know, we're all trying to rush, I think, or maybe not we're all trying to rush. I think we're all trying to think about ways to open, using professional staff, opening the building for a certain number of hours, getting back to our sense of normal, which I think is natural. But at the same time, we have to really be realistic about what's sustainable long-term for all of our resources, not just budget, not just cost. Staffing, the ability to clean, I think Tiffany's point was well taken, the ability to get our resources. So, you know, if we reopen and then we realize 2 weeks later we just burned through all of our PPE, we don't have our custodial staff on campus that typically clean our facilities, that's not going to be sustainable long term. So I think that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Obviously, there's a number of factors that go into that, and I just think a rush to reopen, while good, also we have to really be realistic about what's sustainable. And so dovetailing into that, the thought about, I heard this, I think it might have been a little bit on the aquatics call the other day, but just really thinking about various stages. So I'm sure many of us have run races, or at least familiar with, I think it's Department of Homeland Security, their various stages for a threat level. So, you know, thinking about the various contingencies that we're all planning for, whether that be a fully operational fall where all the students are back on campus, residential learning has resumed, everything is back to normal with maybe some very small modifications, versus a fully remote situation that we're all in now. So faculty are clearly going through that challenge as they move to some synchronous learning. They threw everything on Zoom, they made it work. It was kind of a hot fix, but it has to change for the fall. We have to think about that. So realizing that we might have another situation like this come back open in the fall, and thinking about the various stages and how we might move fluidly between them. So maybe we're reopened and maybe we're in that yellow phase, and that yellow phase may mean that some of our programs and services that have less impact, maybe less of a priority, maybe massage therapy, for instance, as an example, there's close person-to-person contact, and that service is dropped. And as we move through those phases, the governor, the state, the school, the institution, whatever entities push upon us, we get less PPE. We can't clean spaces available as much. We've prioritized that so we can move between those phases fluidly, and we can let our patrons and our students know what those phases are. And so we can communicate in advance. We are in green. Everything is a go except for massage therapy. If we move to a yellow, here are the things that change. You will no longer be able to get on every treadmill. It's every other treadmill. We are limiting capacity. So I think those are probably the two things that I'm kind of thinking about in tandem of how do we reopen, how do we make it sustainable, but at the same time, making sure we have a plan, because it's like the stock market. It's going to go up and down, potentially. And so thinking about how we move up and down along with it as well.
Yeah, and so to add to that, I absolutely agree. And I think one of the challenges I'm having with the entire discussion, I know where everyone's got different priorities and different pressures from all over. I mean, now you're talking state and VP, everything. But what I'm concerned about is that all the chat is about structure, places, spaces. We've lost track of the people that we serve. So we're not focusing on people anymore. We're wondering how far apart the treadmills could be, whether we're even asking the questions, should we have treadmills at this time in use? Because if we open up our fitness centers, but I'm hearing about not the basketball courts and not the pool and not, well, we're just limiting access to students and really creating, I know it's a big word, but elitism a little bit about prioritizing who should have access to what fitness when. And so if we kind of take it a lens of people and say, well, maybe who aren't able to have different opportunities, so people are used to running a track, will run outside, but really focusing it and taking this time to slow down and think about how do we, service the people that we're supposed to service. A lot of people, a lot of institutions, it's students first. And so how do we prioritize and set our strategies long-term to actually hit that and measure that? Some people say, well, we rely on members and revenues from members. Well, maybe it's time to relook at that and saying, is that the way we should be servicing our students through membership revenue? Is there a different way to do that and have that access? And like Walter said, this is a thing that's going to ebb and flow. And so, right, you put all your eggs in one basket to reopen, and then there's a huge new wave, and now you've wasted a bunch of resources that then cannot recover when the next wave hits or the next ebb and flow happens. And so maybe this is the time to slow down and really assess what we're trying to do in our outcome and really look at the people aspect of it, and then kind of help refocus our priorities and our strategies about, well, what does reopening look like for the group of people that we're trying to serve, and what is missing? Like and then there's all the little trickle down effects, like, okay, well, we'll open up the fitness center, but we're going to close our change rooms. So it's like, well, what about hygiene issues now? And students who want to go work out and then shower before a class, or so there's just this super trickle effect that we're not really focusing on because we're so focused on each individual space. But we're going to focus on the pool and the fitness center and the gyms and our programming and what does 6 feet look like? And I would say now's the time, and it's hard because some of us will not have that opportunity because we're going to be mandated. You better be open by September, make it happen. And that's a challenge. But if we have this opportunity, really focus on the students and the people that we're serving and almost work backwards from that. And that might help make it more sustainable. And I think this is something that should have happened before the pandemic, because budgets and resources and cuts were a reality even before the pandemic hit. So if we kind of get back to the people and service, it might change how we look at our programs and services for the future.
If I can just chime in real quick, Mark. Oh, sorry, Jenny. If I can chime in just real quick, I think that's a great point. And I think, another conversation we were having on campus, if we haven't positioned ourselves at this point, to focus on well-being, right? Less so on our specific processes or our facilities or our services, but how we contribute to campus well-being as a whole, particularly during the pandemic, and particularly while students are remote. I mean, we're all doing, for the most part, virtual programming, but just how do we reposition, how do we elevate, how do we put ourselves to have a seat at the table so that when we're talking about well-being, we're talking about students, we're focusing on the people we serve rather than, and I know we're all talking about it, so it's hard to get out of that. How do we talk about that versus a fitness center or a locker room or a pool, et cetera? And I know we need to get into that granular detail, and maybe we're there now, but I think that's a well said point, Mark.
This is Jenny from Portland State. I'm really glad that the conversation has gone a little bit in this direction. We're a school that won't open for a while. We're in Oregon, and we're in the quarter system. So we are lucky that we have the benefit of time, but we've put a lot into our inclusive programming and practices and policies. And I've been thinking about that a lot related to sustainability and well-being. And we have a lot of commuter students. We have a lot of students who need to borrow equipment or just don't have financial resources. And I've been thinking about how that works because it's very difficult to share equipment in times like these. And, same thing with accessing the locker. If you're bringing all your stuff into campus for the day, where does that go? And so I appreciate the conversation has gone in this direction, and that will be a lens as we're all looking at all of this.
To echo that, Jenny, I am too. Thank you, Walter, for putting it in the chat box, and to Mark to start this dialogue, because I feel like especially in our roles, right, we're sandwiched, and so there is that directive, perhaps from an institution, right, from the institutional level, like, here's where we're going, this is what we need to do, and then you also have the staff that you supervise and support that are like, I need to figure out, we need to have that plan, we need to understand what are the ins and outs of it. And where can we leverage our position to help maybe slow the process down and think differently about it, managing and navigating both sides of the coin, if that makes sense. And what I will say is, Walter, I am in that space because the people above me are like, okay, but I want to open, and that's like the goal. That's the finish line. Open. And open might look different, but like I hadn't thought about like, okay, let's open. And then what if this thing goes crazy in a couple of weeks and we got to close again, right? So what's the plan for reclosing and then reopening? And like, what if we got to do that 3 times in the next 6 months? What is the sustainability piece of it? And even just thinking about, like we were talking about masks and purchasing masks, like for a week, we're looking at like 1,000 masks if we opened up, right? And to be able to prepare, to have that PPE. And if you run out, what is that? So I really appreciate the way that it has gone as well. Nicole, do you have any thoughts?
What you and Walter said. I mean, nailed it. It's people before process, and there's that challenge of that business decision within it, right? And it was kind of the comment that I made earlier before we got on about just so they sign a waiver, so if they get COVID, it's not the university's fault. Well, it's very tongue-in-cheek, but we all have our expertise, which leads to just the challenges and the ambiguity. I have seen in the thread is fantastic, you guys, and such an amazing dialogue. 2 things that came up. One, an individual, I think it passed, was asking about community pushback on facility spaces or fields being shut down. Maybe that's a good place to start, because I wanted to be able to address that. It seems like there's still some questions in that. What I took out of that was, hey, the university is shutting down outdoor spaces, and now the community is angry because those are taxpayer dollars. I know at CU, we put up signage to shut down outdoor spaces, and then the community was angry at us because people were still on the fields. Even though we had closed them, but it's a field, how much can you close the field? And a reoccurring dialogue that's going on here, which I really appreciate because it's a conundrum. How much of this is our responsibility as an institution, as a community, and how much is it the responsibility of the individual? And I'm seeing that as a reoccurring theme. So if some folks want to pick up and talk on that, I think that would be fantastic.
I'll answer quickly of what I posted earlier in the chat. I wonder if there's something we can learn from currently open services. So like grocery stores. I'm the only sole shopper in our store. Every time I come back for my weekly shopping trip, I'm just agitated and stressed because there's all the information and rules and the taped lines and the one-way ways and announcements that come on, yet I'll see families of 4 wandering around, just touching everything and that. So, you know, especially with risk management and wondering, you know, what's our responsibility? Is there something we can learn from that, knowing that, well, we did the best that we could to put that information out there. Again, David Bowles yesterday on the director's chat mentioned that, you know, it's impossible to keep the facility clean 24/7. I mean, the second someone got on a machine and came off, it's now possibly infected. So there's got to be that balance of us doing our due diligence of saying, yeah, we put the machines and we facilitated the space. It's going to be harder to facilitate the people, and it's going to be even harder for student staff to have to be enforcers, where we don't want to put them in that role. We don't want to put our full-time staff in that role. So how do we become educators and facilitators rather than enforcers, and then be comfortable with realizing that we cannot do this 24/7. And so there's got to be that balance of what we can and what we cannot do, and be open about that. To you know, David said he'd go to his president saying, if that's what you want, I cannot do that. I cannot guarantee that the facility is 100% clean, because the second someone comes in, it's done. We don't know what's going to happen.
And to add on top of that, Mark, look at our demographic that we're dealing with. They tend to be, that age group tends to be the ones who are the least, maybe, I don't want to say concerned, but tend to be like, it's not going to hit me. I'm not going to be affected. And, you know, look at the spring breaks, look at the problems that happen with all that of, you know, oh, that's, you know, we're not old, we're fine. So not only are we trying to, you know, create these rules and guidelines, but we've got a pretty, you know, that 18 to 24 demographic that tend to be the ones who are maybe not intentionally, but even the ones that I see just out and about tend to be the least responsive to the 6-foot distancing or anything like that. I'm like, you are not even close to 6 feet apart. And yet, you know, for them, they just don't even think about it. They just start to migrate together and want to meet and, you know, get into groups. So, you know, on top of it, I mean, I'm really hoping that that will be the one silver lining that comes out of all this, is that our users and the people that come into the facility will realize how important it is to keep the facility clean. You know, we've been telling them for years to wipe down. Now, do they really know that they need to do that? And, you know, will they start to buy in? Who knows? But, you know, time will tell with that. But I'm hoping that will be the silver lining. That all of a sudden people are like, no, I'm wiping that down before and after I use it. We'll see if it happens.
Mark, the other thing I think you brought up too is, you know, is about the signage that we put up and try in our attempt to try to keep everybody safe. You know, we're in a situation where our outdoor facilities are the universities. We're not a community. So our biggest problem is keeping the community off, you know, in that situation. But I wonder how we word our signage takes a little bit of, you know, I hate to say takes the liability off of us and puts the ownership back on, you know, the individuals being accountable. But I think that might be critical to how we post the signage. It's kind of like, you know, when you go to a hotel pool and it says no lifeguard on duty, swim at your own risk kind of thing. You know, how we put that forward to those people who, for whatever reason, just don't see the urgency of not doing some of the things that we're asking them not to do. But how we word it might come back in the long run as to how liable we actually are if there are facilities. I don't know.
Going off with I'm Haley, I'm from Northwest College in Wyoming. Going off with what Mark was saying a little bit about like we have to kind of relook at who we're opening for and things like that. We're located in a very small community. I'm just wondering, Mark, if any of you guys actually are struggling with the culture and of like kind of like the outlook of what people are taking this pandemic as, and that's where I'm at. I'm getting a push of let's reopen, and I get phone calls every day from community members asking when we're going to reopen. And then I also have this drawn to this social responsibility, kind of like what Mark was hitting at, of like, why are we rushing it? So, I mean, I'm just kind of torn in that of like, I'm getting this push because Wyoming, we social distance every day. It's just part of our culture. Like, we're very rural. We don't have large venues that people go to a lot. I mean, the town that Northwest is in is about 5,000 people. So we're extremely rural, and it's a lot of farmers and ag workers. So it's part of the daily culture. So the pandemic for them, they don't see it a whole lot. So it's just kind of that struggle for me of like, I'm with Mark. I agree 110%. Why do I have to rush this? Like, we're here for the students, not for the community. And I want to say that to them sometimes, like, we're here for the students. Students are off campus, they're gone. But it's just that struggle of like, we need this space back. So.
If I can hop in, I know we have about 7 minutes left, and I think our ongoing dialogue on facility opening is going to vary a lot. I love hanging out with you guys. I'm jotting down all these notes already to share with my boss and the rest of the leadership team. But I'm seeing some thread related specifically to the leadership challenges, and I'm wondering if we could take maybe our last few minutes and speak to that. I had the pleasure of hanging out with Lance Heaney and Michael, some of our Georgia Rights, last week regarding the challenges of the leadership, especially while doing this pandemic work, looking at the layoffs, how I in one day sent to my team, here's our meeting on upcoming furloughs. It's going to happen. I just don't know when and how long. And 5 hours later, it's like, oh, start to work on your opening checklist. And yes, the irony of this is not wasted on me. So does anybody want to speak to some of their leadership challenges or wins or fails? We have parent wins, parent fails. I'm sure we have leadership wins. I want to give space for that.
I can speak up since I kind of started the little chain there as well. Sarah Shoulin at Princeton University. I think to my message in the chat, it's been something where I was just feeling the roller coaster of emotions and just feeling tired one day and then feeling like frustrated and feeling very unmotivated because all of the things that we're doing now remotely, yes, those are a part of our regular job duties, but the motivation is the students. The motivation is my people that I supervise, is the people, the engagement every day and the social interaction. So I was really struggling a lot. I've never felt more like an extrovert. But the reality is that I was actually randomly I don't listen to podcasts, but apparently I do now, based on a recommendation. Brene Brown has a series called Unlocking Us, and I know she's all the rage these days, but there's a really good specific one that was only 25 minutes long, and it was called the 50-50 myth and settling the ball. And the way she described it was like, we're going through a crisis, your adrenaline is starting to wear off because most crisis or emergency situations are very short in theory, or let's say it's a death of a family member or, an injury or whatever. There's kind of a finality to when that is ending, or you can, there's some sort of process. And since everything is so unknown and the end date is so unknown for a lot of us, how does that kind of adrenaline, once it starts to fade, how are you managing? And the other point is that the grief factor, we're all suffering of loss of some way, whether we've lost someone to COVID-19 or we've lost our job or we've lost our ability to communicate with our staff members face to face, or, whatever it may be, everyone is experiencing some form of grief. And so that really translated to me in terms of my expectations as a leader. And that is kind of compounded by the fact that I feel a need to be a motivator, a need to be a leader, a need to keep us on track and, do the building, contingency plans and reopening and all that focus, but just kind of taking a moment to think about the kind of personal feelings to it. And I think one way to manage that I've found is just to be truly authentic and tell my staff if we're having our meetings, like, I'm struggling today. I know you all need me to be a good leader. And the way I can be a leader right now is to tell you that I'm struggling. Tomorrow, hopefully, will be a better day. And just kind of, offer opportunities for people to share. But I think it's something that, as the next piece of it that I've been thinking about, is as we have to reallocate or, from checking out equipment. So maybe we can't have student employees and that's us doing it. And I have to ask my assistant director of sport clubs to become a fitness attendant for our online classes. As these things move up, keeping them motivated and focused. And, that was kind of, I guess, my point in trying to figure out if there's tips and tricks or resources for us to kind of group together and be good managers, even in this weird time.
Sarah, I want to thank you very much for being authentic with 100 people that maybe you know or don't know.
I'm feeling a little nervous, I'm not going to lie, but that's okay.
Amazing, right? And I think Brene would be proud because you were being vulnerable and then opening the doors for others to connect and to affirm your feelings. What I'll say is, so Michelle's giving you some claps, right? So is Haley, yay, there's some claps around there, right? I am, I'm 43 and, it's middle-aged woman. There are things that are happening in my body and my life, but with this piece as well, I would get sweaty and my heart is racing. It's what's happening? Is this biological or is it stress related? And I really think, thank you, ladies. Thank you for those of you who are laughing with me. I appreciate you. You are my people. You understand. Confused, what is it? And trying to understand, right? Okay. And there's a lot of those things, the intersectionality of what's happening in our lives, and how do we work through that? And I think one of the things that I've tried to do is, of course, to continue to keep active. And even though I think we were talking a lot about outdoor space, I'm also on the board of directors for AOR. And so I encourage everyone to go outside. Every day, if it's possible, to go outside and breathe fresh air. There is lots of research out there about the positive aspects of being outside, even if you just take your call outside or take your computer with you and enjoy just that calming space. That's been helpful for me to get outside every day and not just be confined to a chair, a space, and be able to kind of let go. And I've also had 6 a.m. walking phone calls in the morning with some staff, because that's how we're able to get out there, still stay connected, and kind of help manage, right? Help do that stuff out there. I know right now in Princeton, it's still probably, the lovely 38 degrees and raining because up there, but if and can, you will, right? Those kinds of things. I don't know if anybody else has things that are kind of working for them or they're experimenting with, just before we kind of end this call, to end on a high note. What's working, what's doing well? What's keeping you happy? Anything?
Hey, Victoria, this is Becky from University of Arkansas. I have found a deep dive into rage cleaning. I don't know if it's a real thing, but it's really some hardcore therapy for me. So if you need any tips, I found a really good Instagram account to follow that'll inspire you.
RJ Skinner here from University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, Canada. And one of the things that's helped me from a work standpoint and just a sanity standpoint is we connect with our direct coworkers a lot of the time, but your other coworkers or colleagues that you have on campus that you would have otherwise just checked in with regularly that maybe you haven't had a reason to work-wise. I've been reaching out to those and trying to keep those upstanding meetings, even if it's just a quick Zoom call or anything like that. Take that 5 minutes, 30 minutes out of your day to share coffee and just kind of, again, connect with those people who are going through the same thing, different maybe for their area of work, but being able to just have that connection. And again, outside of your regular Zoom conversation where you see the same 5-10 faces or whatever daily, just keep that connection there, and it helps something to look forward to, so you see somebody else outside of your circle.
I like that. I really believe in relationship building and finding opportunities to laugh every day. I'm a laugher. I laugh all day, every day. I find humor in everything. And I think that is a really therapeutic, helpful way to get through this.
Well, I want to just thank everybody, especially, so I'm going to end on that laughing high note, that smile, right? So if today we can find at least one thing to laugh at and smile, it is Friday, right? It is May, it is a new month, it is new things. I want to thank all of you for your input, for the chat, for the discussion, for the authenticity, for the dialogue. My chica, Nicole, girlfriend, thanks for doing this with me.
Yeah, this is fantastic. You know, I'm a big believer that Friday meetings suck, but hanging out with you guys is not a meeting. I mean, it felt good. So thanks for the group rally. Thanks for the group hug, and have a fabulous weekend. I look forward to hanging out with you all again, even on Friday.
So we'll see how the interest goes, and we'll keep this up. Thanks, NIRSA family. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Take care.